Okay, good afternoon. In the interest of time, I think we'll get rolling and start rolling out the webinar, and then people can just catch up. This is all being recorded anyway, so if for those that arrive late, they'll be able to watch it on the catch up on there by the YouTube channels, or if you go to the Humber Growth Hub site, you'll be able to catch the videos up there. So welcome to this Humber Growth Hub webinar, my Grow My SME webinar. This is part of a series of webinars that the Growth Hub offer, where we're hosted by experts from all different backgrounds and covering all sorts of different topics. And it's all part of the Grow My SME program, which is really just a series of initiatives to kind of help businesses in the Humber region upskill, develop, grow, future-proof, particularly relevant in the time that we're in. This last year has been particularly difficult for businesses, so the local authorities are trying to help in any way they can, and these series of webinars, of which there are many, are one way of doing that. And you'll be able to see further webinars on the relevant website. I'll give you all that information at the end when we'll talk about it, as well as talk about some more tailored one-to-one direct bespoke support that's available from consultants like ourselves to help your business navigate what is turbulent times at the moment, but just generally also help your business rethink what it's doing, help it to grow, plug gaps, embrace new opportunities, and deal with any barriers you might be facing. So that's kind of what this is all about, and we'll talk about that at the end. So stick around at the end and I can sort of advise you as to some of that. Moving on to today, what we're talking about? Well, we're talking about digital. This is one of the key things that one of the key areas that the Growth Hub are really keen to support with, and the whole Grow My SME program really is focused, or has a large focus at least, on the whole digital element. As you can see, we're all working from home. I'm sat in my living room here delivering this, so you know, this is just one way of them using it to communicate, and you guys signing on to this is a way of using it for your benefit. So digital, particularly for businesses though, and this is Technology and Digital Company Essentials. And this is really all about how to use technology and how to use digital infrastructure and digital opportunities that are out there, new tools and things, to bring them into your business and help your business embrace what's out there and help it to grow and use it to streamline. It might be to use it to enter more markets. It might be to overcome barriers. It might be to retain more staff. There's lots of things to use for, and we're going to talk about some of that stuff. If you've been to these webinars before, then this is very much a top level kind of overview, really. You know, so some of it you might find really useful. Some of it you might already be aware, but it might just help you think about some new ideas around that. So, you know, that we'll try and go through it bit by bit, and hopefully it'll give you some good insight in how to use your business to turn your business into a digital first business, and making sure that you're using all the opportunities that come from that. So that's what we're going to talk about. Just a bit of background. My name's Wayne Willis. I'm one of the consultants at a company called the Dennett Group. I'm joined by my colleagues Rob Lewis and Jamie Del Grosso, who will be taking us through today's presentation. We're an innovation consultancy. We work with businesses and brands all over the world, helping them to develop their innovation strategies, and helping them to think differently about what they do as a business and discover new ways forward and help them grow. And a big focus on that is certainly digital technology and how that can help. So that's what we'll be talking about today. If you've got any questions, please feel free to dive in. We don't really like you know, death by webinar. So if you've got any questions, then dive in, ask away, and we'll try and answer them as we go, or we'll try and answer them at the end. And as I say, I'll tell you about some more very specific free tailored support that you can access at the end of this webinar. So with that, I'll hand over to Jamie, and we'll go for blast off. Thanks, Jamie.
Great, thanks, Wayne. Hi guys, as Wayne said, we are from a company called Dennett Group, and we are an innovation consultancy. So we help companies all around the world to innovate. And the way that we do this is through something that we call the 3Ds. So the 3Ds are our three core principles for bringing innovation into any company. So these are to be disruptive, think digitally, think differently, and embrace digital. So what we're going to do today is just focus a little bit on the embrace digital element and just talk about how digital is changing the business landscape, and what it's going to do in the future, and why we should actually be looking at doing this. Obviously, right now we're talking about it a lot because of COVID, and the working situation has changed dramatically. So everyone is forced to embrace digital to some degree. But actually, in the long run, embracing digital, regardless of what is happening now, can have really significant changes to your business and really help with growth and making things a lot easier for you. So when we're talking about digital, what we're talking about is the use of physical or virtual technology to aid in a function or operation. So physical technology, which we call hardware, or virtual technology, which is software. So to put that in context, if we look back in the past, a business of significant scale, maybe one that operates internationally or has had some significant growth, would need to look something like this. So it would need large infrastructure, it would need lots of staff, lots of people doing small jobs, and obviously there was a very significant cost to that. So actually growth was a very expensive thing to do. The other side to this was that you were able to see your competitors in a marketplace, because a business that was scaling up to this level and to this degree would have been something very visible. You'd be able to see that. It would be very hard to go unnoticed as if you were scaling up to this level. However, nowadays, a business of the same scale and the same reach could look something like this. So we're seeing more and more businesses that are starting from home or remotely, co-working spaces, and people really only need a computer, a laptop, and an internet connection. And through the advancements in digital technology and software that we have access to, people are able to do all of these functions themselves using digital tools. So great examples are things like accounting. If we look at the previous slide that we just showed, an accounts there would need to be handled by a team of people all doing sort of their own jobs. Now we can use online tools, and probably most businesses are using some form of online platform for managing accounts, sending invoices and things of that nature, which we'll go into a little bit later on. But the other side of this is it's very difficult to see where your competition is coming from nowadays, because it's very easy for someone to start a business at home with very little cost, very little risk, and very quickly get a global reach and disrupt a marketplace. So businesses like Airbnb, even companies like Google that we all know, started from a computer in someone's bedroom or back bedroom somewhere. And this really goes to show that actually we don't need that large infrastructure, and those companies can grow very quickly and disrupt what we think is a very stable marketplace. Now, if we look at the future and what that might entail, this that I'm showing you on screen now is an animation that was created by a computer called Google DeepMind. So Google DeepMind is a machine learning computer. Now, machine learning is sort of the next level, the next step of artificial intelligence. So we've all heard of AI. Pretty much everything has AI built into it nowadays. You can get toasters that have got smart technology built in, and we have voice assistants in our house. But these work essentially in a form of a decision tree. So they have pre-programmed answers and responses to certain triggers, whether that's you saying something to them or doing something. Machine learning can actually determine those answers and figure out those answers on its own. So it's able to understand and figure out these solutions, and at a much quicker rate than we can as humans. So in this example, Google gave DeepMind a humanoid figure and give it a challenge of getting from point A to point B through an obstacle course as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And in a very short period of time, this machine was able to understand the mechanics of walking, of how best to move a human figure and avoid these obstacles. Now, if we consider how long it takes for the average human to understand the mechanics of walking compared to, I think it was 3 hours or 3 days for this machine to understand that, this shows very quick understanding and processing of information and being able to come up with a solution based on it. So this has already been used now in many different forms. So some of these machine learning computers are already being used in things like Formula One. So all the data in a Formula One car is captured through sensors, sent to a computer, and they're using machine learning algorithms to figure out how they can make small changes to impact the efficiency of that driver of the car. And in something like that, you know, those seconds can be the difference between winning or losing. So we're seeing this technology being implemented already. It is already accessible. And if we think about how that could be used in business, you know, from understanding the stock markets and, you know, how stock may move, or making quick business decisions based on numbers. This technology is able to do that in extremely quick time, and make decisions for us, which opens up a really interesting side of business and where that could lead. And when we're talking about the growth of business, the growth of technology in business and in our everyday lives, what we're seeing is not just huge growth, but huge increase in the speed that we grow. So every time that we develop new technology, that technology in turn helps us develop the next wave of technology. So for example, things like machine learning has enabled engineers and scientists and developers to develop new things that they wouldn't have been able to do previously, which has in turn created a whole new range of technology services. So this graph on screen is from a company called The Emerging Future, and they look at how technology is impacting our lives and how it may impact our lives in the future. And they did some research to look at the growth of digital technology and our technological advancement. And basically, they said if we follow the path that we are on now and the kind of snowball effects that we have of technology developing further technology, in the next 5 years, they predicted we will be 32 times more technologically advanced than we are today. When they looked at that over a longer period of time, what they found is that that curve got much steeper. And after 10 years, we'd be 1,000 times more advanced. And when they looked even further than that, over 20 years, we'd be 1,000,000 times more advanced than we are today in terms of the technology we have access to. Now, this seems like a very steep curve and a very large number. But if we look at how quickly technology has developed already, so if we take something like this was the first touchscreen phone that was ever developed. So this is the Simon by IBM. Now, this looks very primitive to us now, and when we compare it to the phones that we have nowadays, it is nowhere near what we have. But this was released in 1991, which in terms of a product life cycle was not that long ago. And we can already see, I mean, just by the phones that you probably have in your pockets or, you know, on your desk right now, how much that has moved on and how much more technologically advanced we've got with that in that time period. Now, if you look at technology that was released more recently, so for example, virtual reality headsets, the idea of virtual reality has actually been around for a long time, but available headsets that were commercially available, that people could buy, people could utilize, and were actually cost effective, have only been around a very short period of time. But already in that short period of time of having this technology, we've seen people use this to develop whole new waves of technology. So in this example, this is an engineering company, and they're using virtual reality to simulate and test different machines and things. So by using this technology, they're able to test ideas, they're able to develop new things without the cost and the risk of actually developing all of these different machines. So this is allowing us to advance much more quickly than we were before. And this is, again, a very short period of time since this technology was made available to us at the scale it is. So we can actually see that every time a new technology is released, the time from release to adoption to us then using it to develop something further is getting shorter and shorter. And it just keeps getting shorter and shorter. So it is something that we should be embracing because, as we said, technology will never move as slowly as it is today. It will continue to grow, and it will continue to grow much more quickly. So that's a little bit about the power of digital, why we should be embracing it and why it's important. But if we're going to look at embracing digital for our businesses, we need to understand why digital also has value and is important to our customers. So we're going to talk about something that we call the digital first consumer. So we all know that consumers are changing the behavior and things are becoming more centered on digital. We're seeing that in mass at the moment because of things like COVID. But in general, what we've seen for many years is customers slowly moving to a more digital first approach and being more focused on digital mediums. So just to put that into some figures, if we first look at something like social media and its impact on business. So a bit of research was done, it was actually a couple of years ago now, so these figures have probably changed slightly and more than likely gone up. But during this research, they asked a huge amount of consumers about their buying habits, and 43% of the consumers they asked said that they would be more likely to buy a product if they learnt about it on social media first. So if they come across a product on social media, they would be much more likely to buy it. And the people that didn't find something first on social media, so 74% of them said that they would still rely on social media to guide the purchases. So people aren't going to the typical review sites as much, people aren't going to the company websites as much, or even if they are, the first thing they do is they go to social media and they look at the comments, they look at the engagement to determine, you know, whether people are happy with that product and to get an idea of how that product is performing for the consumers that have already bought into it. So this has become a huge way that people are actually developing trust within a brand and determining whether a customer wants to buy into something. So this is something that all businesses should be embracing. I'm sure lots of you already are aware of social media and probably embracing it already. But as you can see just from these figures, it's actually becoming quite a significant part of the purchasing process for most consumers. And then looking away from sort of more product-centric stuff and actually looking at more B2B businesses and service-based businesses, even those sort of businesses have said, 60% have said that they've gained new customers through social media efforts. So regardless of the type of business you are, lots of businesses are finding that social media is a great touch point to reach out to consumers and gain new clients and just gain recognition for the brand. So it's important to remember that this is a huge part of people's lives. And if we are going to make our businesses digital, this is one of the first touch points we should consider because this is the medium people are used to being communicated in. The next thing to look at is the mobile first consumer. So over the years, the way people have accessed the internet has changed rapidly. So we've gone from a scenario where most computing was done on a home desktop, so on a home desktop computer, to people using more remote things like laptops. And now the majority of traffic is through mobile devices like phones and tablets. And over the last 7 years, we've seen this go up 222%. And again, this was back in 2019. The growth of this has gone up every year and it's gone up a substantial amount. And with things like COVID, again, this has probably amplified this growth. So now we're probably looking at a much higher rate of mobile traffic than we have before. So when we're looking at the solutions we create, whether that's our website, whether it's social media, whether it's some app we're developing or some system, the likelihood is most people will be using a mobile phone to access it. And this is not just consumers, businesses too. Everyone is using the mobile devices as their main way to access the internet or to access digital information. And again, what we can see is not just the growth of mobile, but the decline of desktop. So less people, and this is again through all forms of business and at home, people are using the desktop devices less and less to access the internet for information, especially about new products or services. So actually, I did see a recently updated version of this graph, and those lines have actually crossed over. So mobile has massively overtaken all desktop usage now.
Yeah, Jay, I think it's worth adding as well. I think it's become a cultural thing, and this is a key point that we need to reference here. You know, it's not just a shift in the advancement of technology. which really is advancing at an alarming rate. And you only have to look back at your last 10 years of kind of devices you've used or the way that you've lived or worked. You'll have seen, you've been in it, so probably not noticed it, but on reflection, the advancement of tech has been huge, and it's continuing to happen. And because we're in it day to day, we're almost not seeing it and sort of adjusting naturally part of it. So it's becoming a cultural thing. And just on this graph here, I was looking at, I have my laptop in front of me most hours of the day, to be fair, because of work, but I still pick up my phone to search for things, to Google or to check things, or, you know, I've got a browser open in front of me now, and I would still pick up my phone to check a, you know, to look something or check a spelling or whatever it might be. So it's like a cultural thing that we have, that's our go-to for news, for advice, for making contact, for finding out information, for banking, whatever it might be. And so that culture is only going to continue to shift, and it is completely applicable to whatever scale of size business you are and whatever type of business you are, because even if you're B2B, and I hear it a lot, particularly in the more legacy B2Bs, that this isn't particularly relevant to them. You've got to remember the people that are behind that B2B are people. And they are actively engaging and using these devices and using social media and using all this other stuff, just like we are every single day. So you've kind of got to think in a people sense rather than in a what type of business it is. And that would help you take things forward, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly, a bit of research was actually done into that, into understanding the cultural side of this. And there's a behavioral psychology experiment that was done where they went into various places, workplaces, people in the streets, and they asked them a question. They said, could you find out the answer to this question? Could you look up this? To see how people would address that question, how they would find the answer. And obviously most people got the phones out and went straight to Google and typed in what the question was to get the answer. What was interesting that they found out was they were asking people in offices and workspaces too. And just as Wayne said, people who were sat at their desktop with a browser open would reach into the pocket, pull the phone out, and then type in the question to get their answer. So it is really becoming a cultural thing where it's just second nature. When someone says, oh, can you check this for me? Your first thought is to get your phone out and Google it, or most people's is. So yeah, really, really interesting point to add to that, you know, people have actually looked into it, and it is a very valid or very, very well recognised cultural change.
Yeah, I think it'd be an interesting study as well, just so the people that are on the call, how many people are watching this on a laptop or on a desktop now and also looking at their phone at the same time to check whatever? Because that's probably happening. I mean, I'd like to think we're slightly engaging, so you're not looking too much, but you probably are, or you've got it next year, or you keep reverting to it. And again, that you know, our eyes can't stay away. So that's really the shift.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So the next thing to understand is ecosystems. So in technology, what we've seen is a massive growth in people buying into ecosystems, not particularly products. So what we mean by this is technologies that work together in a network to create an ecosystem. Now, a great example of this is home automation devices and voice assistants. So I've got the Amazon Echo. I won't say the name because if everyone's got one, I'll be triggering them at home. But these devices have become such commonplace that now when people are buying products for the house, they will consider, will it work with this device that I already have at home? So if even something as basic as light bulbs, and I've done this myself, I've looked for, you know, some new light bulbs for something at home. And I think, well, do you know, I'll get the one that works with that ecosystem I've got so I can turn it on and off with my voice assistant. And this is actually really changing how people buy things. And when we look at probably more well-recognized ecosystems that maybe we don't really recognize as an ecosystem, things like Apple or Windows, for example, most people, you know, will either be bought into an Apple ecosystem or a Windows ecosystem, or potentially, if we're talking phones, an Android system. And you hear the comment a lot, you know, do you have you have an iPhone or do you have an Android? Now that will then determine your buying habits based on the technology you have. If you have a Mac, for example, if you work off a MacBook, the products you will buy for that MacBook or for working will probably be based on the fact you have a MacBook. You have bought into that system. And and you are aware of that whenever you purchase something new. The other benefit to this is if you are someone who's created an ecosystem, in a way you're almost locking people into your product, you're locking people into your services. So if you use Apple on your phone, you probably might use iTunes, so you've bought into their system. If you buy a phone to go with your computer, you'll probably buy the Apple phone to go with the computer, because you know they sync and work together. So understanding the idea of an ecosystem is really powerful, and actually it's a great way to one, add value to your consumers, but also to almost lock those consumers in a little bit into what it is that you're offering. And we'll actually go more into ecosystems and how they can be used later on. So if we understand the power of digital, we understand what consumers see value in when it comes to digital, the next step is to understand a digital product, understand how it works, how it's put together. Now, what we're going to go through here is a bit of a top level understanding of it, because I don't expect that you all want to go and become developers and start developing your own apps and things. But it's just to allow people to understand actually how these products are put together. So if you are looking at maybe developing some of your own, or hiring someone to do so, or just looking at purchasing digital platforms to help your business, understanding what that means and how they work can really make the process a lot smoother. So when we talk about the anatomy of a digital product, regardless of what the product is, whether it's a website or an app, it will all have a very similar anatomy behind the scenes. So for most digital products, you will have these sort of areas. So basically, almost every digital product needs storage. Now, when we talk about storage, we're talking about the database, where all the data and the information that actually makes that product valuable live. And in most cases, this is the most valuable bit of a product or a digital product, because without it, it's just a pretty front end, but there's no value behind it. There isn't any information or data. So if you've got an app that compares holidays, for example, and allows people to book a holiday, the storage would be where all those different holidays are saved, where all the information is, the prices are. If you take that away, then all you've got is a shell. So it's really important, and probably one of the first things that needs to be considered. If you're looking at buying into a service, it's worth considering how things are stored, because your data will become part of that data set. The things that you upload to that system will be added to that storage. So is it something that you own? Do you have the storage? Is it something that's hosted elsewhere in the cloud, for example? Is it secure? So these are all things that we need to look at. The next step in that process is the back end. So the back end of a website or an app is essentially the bits that you don't see. So you'll hear developers often talk about front end and back end. The back end is basically anything that happens behind the scenes. It's the functionality of a website or an app. So when I click this button, what happens? What does it do? And it's basically a series of, it's sort of the coding that's used to put it together. It's the server infrastructure. It's everything that makes it physically work. And this would all fall under the back end of that product. Now, if you want to be technical, you can break that down into further bits, and you'll have sort of the back end of the code, and the back end that's more the architecture, which is the server. But in general, as long as you understand that you have the pretty bit that you see, and then you have all the back end functionality, which is managed in a different way, it can allow you to understand some of the conversations that are happening and allow things that are being shown to you in terms of digital products. And finally, obviously, we have the front end. So the front end is the pretty bit, it's the user experience. So this is how it looks. It's the design that you see. And it's often thought about in terms of the layout, and is it easy to understand. So if we take this idea and we put it into another analogy, so we'll put it into the analogy of building a car. So if our digital product is this car, the storage would be the fuel. Without the fuel, there's no momentum, there's no value really, because it's just a shell. It doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't do anything. So the storage would be the fuel that powers it, that makes it move forward. The back end is all the internal workings. It's the bits you can't really see, but they're the bits that actually make it work, make it do the function it's intended to do. Then we move on to the front end, which is essentially the pretty bit. It's what you see, the first impression. And in most cases, this is actually what will determine, or will be the first impression that will help a consumer determine whether they want to buy into that product. So for example, if you've got a really well put together front end, they've got a nice looking car here, and then you've also got, you know, an old Corsa that's falling apart and got rust all over it. Now, it doesn't matter what the back end is, because on that first impression, they're going to make assessments and make judgments on what that product will be like. So as well as having a product that works, having one that is easy to use and that looks good can often be a massive deciding factor on whether people adopt your product or your service, or if you should use one yourself, because often if it's something you're using every day, you want to make sure that it's something that is comfortable and is nice to use. And finally, sort of in addition to the front end, is the user experience. And this is something that really almost needs to be thought about separately. So when we talk about front end, normally talk about design. User experience is actually more about how a user interacts with that design. So something as simple as the placement of a button, where that is, you know, does it take 10 clicks to get to where they need to be on a website, or can they do it in 3? You know, this user experience can actually determine, you know, how easy something is to use and whether they'll stick with that or go to another option that's just a little bit more easy to use. So in this example, we've shown the inside of a car, because that's the best way to think of the user experience. Although it's part of the front end, it is a little bit more about the interaction. It's a little bit more about how that consumer controls that product and interacts with that product. So this is the basic anatomy of digital products. And if you can understand those areas, then whether you're looking at developing one yourself or buying into one, you can understand what it is you need to be looking for, understand the conversations that are happening, and break down what can be quite complex conversations into sort of more basic areas and sort of understand what's being said. And then if we understand how to build a digital product, really that's not enough on its own. We need to understand how to build a product that has value to a consumer. And in order to do that, we need to understand what our consumers' needs are. So we have a way of identifying this that we call the 5 E's. And that's 5 key things that a consumer, for pretty much any industry, any type, will be looking at. So whether it's a B2B customer, whether it's a B2C customer, regardless of the product you sell or if it's a service, in general, most of their needs will fall into one of these 5 E's, or more than likely all of them. So when we talk about digital, the thing to understand is that the digital landscape is noisy. There is so many apps that exist for pretty much every purpose. So without understanding a consumer's needs and what they want, it's very hard to break through that noise. So what we always say to people is that you need to understand what value you're bringing, why is your product different, and what is a consumer need you're addressing. So if we put together these consumer needs, we add some digital innovation to it, and we'll actually go into the different types of digital innovation you could look at soon, and you can get people to adopt that, then essentially you're almost guaranteed to have a successful digital delivery. So these are kind of the 3 components that equal success in releasing, rolling out, or even using a digital product. So we'll go through the consumer needs, the 5 E's, which are ease, entertainment, economic, education, and ecosystem. So when we're talking about ease, what we're talking about is how easy and efficient is the product to use or the service to use. So consumers will be looking at something that looks good and has a nice user experience, like we said before with the car. They want something that makes their life easier. So if your system allows them to automate certain tasks, or again, if you're looking at purchasing or buying into digital software, then is that something that can make people's lives easier? Is it something that makes things more efficient? Or is it actually just an added process? If it's an added process, people are very unlikely to adopt it or stick to it for very long. If it's something that actually makes their life easier, then you're much more likely to get that buy-in. Entertainment isn't just looking at the idea of entertainment itself. So there's a lot of platforms that offer entertainment as a service, Netflix and Spotify. But actually, the product itself we can look at the idea of entertainment or enjoyment. So is it something that's actually just nicer or more fun to use? There's some great examples of people that have done this in things like call centers, where they've used digital technology to track how many calls people have taken, and they put it on a screen and gamify it. This creates a level of enjoyment and excitement to what they're doing. And by doing that, it makes people want to adopt it and stick with it more. So again, whether that is a customer that you want to buy into your product, or it's getting your workforce to buy into a product and use it, the entertainment factor can really be a selling point. Economic is the obvious one. For most people, when you're looking at digital, you're looking at saving costs or helping you to increase your revenue. So is this product something that will help you reduce your overheads? Is it cheaper than competitors? Does it add better value for the money? And another thing to consider is we've actually seen a cultural change where people are actually more attracted to smaller ongoing payments than they are large payments. So if you've got something that is, let's say, a product or a service that is a one-off cost, if you are able to change that pricing model to more of a subscription model, for example, what we see is a huge uptake where people are much more likely to buy into it, because people are signing up to subscriptions for just about everything nowadays, and people are quite happy to have small amounts of money coming out of the bank every month rather than a large outgoing. Now, in the long run, you may actually make a lot more money from doing that because you've got that sustained income from somebody. But what we can see is that consumers are actually more happy to do that, even though they may be paying more for it, than to pay a large sum of money. So if that's something you can offer through a digital service, to maybe offer a new payment model for your consumers, again, that's possibly a really good way to create buying for your products or services. And create that early adoption. Education, and we're not just talking here about educate in terms of teaching. We can use technology to train, to teach, but also educate in delivery of information. So if we take, for example, something like a Fitbit, like a smart fitness tracker that most people wear, Fitbit arguably has probably done more for health than a lot of other products can claim. Despite the fact Fitbit does very, very little in the way of actually helping you get healthy, all it does is provide you with information. It provides you with knowledge so that you can make different decisions. So if you have access to data, if you're recording data or have data in your industry, and you're able to provide that to people in some form of tool, that data has value. It allows people to understand things better. It allows them to gain new knowledge. And this can be a really powerful tool. So understanding data and actually using it as a way to educate and provide knowledge is a great way to get people to buy into a product, or again, to find value in a product if it's something you're looking for yourself. And finally, ecosystem. So we've already kind of covered this, but if you can create a product that in turn creates an ecosystem or integrates with an existing ecosystem, then you've created something that can lock people into that brand, can keep people in your ecosystem, keep them purchasing from you. Or alternatively, if it's something you're buying into, there's value there as well because it makes your life easier. You know it will work with the existing ecosystem you've got. You don't have any issues with integration or getting things to work. So this is another huge benefit to consumer, and another great way to get your product out there and get people to adopt it. And finally, if you can bring multiple consumer needs together into one product, then you can really take your products to overdrive and create something that can be a huge disruptor in the industry. So if we have an understanding of consumer needs, how do we then actually create a product to address these? So we understand the anatomy products, we understand what our consumer is looking for, but how do we actually turn that into something? How do we use innovation to make something out of that? So there's a couple of different types of innovation, digital innovation, and we've kind of broken these down so you understand how technology can be used to innovate in your field or in your product. So first we have automation, and this is probably the most common use of technology. Automation is simplifying and automating tasks that you do day to day to free up your time, reduce overheads, and make your life a little bit easier. So a great example, something that probably many people are already using, is something like Xero. So Xero is a cloud-based accounting system. By using something like Xero, you're able to take what would be a large task with many people and turn it into a basic digital process that you can do from anywhere. You could be sat at home and think, oh, I need to send that invoice out, get your phone out and do the job there. So this is a great way of automating a task and saving time. And for businesses, things like this have actually been one of the big turning points that's actually allowed people to work from home and work for much lower cost and much lower risk. And also bringing the idea of automation to fields that maybe you wouldn't consider could be automated or simplified. So this app is an app called Babylon, which is essentially a virtual GP. So we all know that the NHS is under stress and there's a huge wait list for doctors. So basically what Babylon have done is they've created an app that uses artificial intelligence, so people can contact to ask questions, and it will have a series of predefined questions. So in this scenario, someone said they've got a headache. It knows what questions to ask to determine how serious that case is. Should they see a doctor? Or is it just something that they can simply advise them on the best path forward to help themselves? And this is actually allowing people to basically deal with GPs at home. They can just do it through teleconferencing, speak to a doctor, get the information they need. So it's saving the doctor's time, and it's actually making it much easier for people at home. So it's addressing that ease as well. And Babylon's already making huge waves in terms of health and helping people. So a great example of how they've automated a very manual process to sort of make everyone's lives a little bit easier. Information and gamification. So this falls into when we spoke about education and using knowledge and data. So we have things like Fitbit. So again, Fitbit really doesn't do anything other than provide data and information, but that data and information allows you to make better choices. So sometimes that innovation could actually just be presenting the knowledge that you already have and making it accessible to people. Or we can do something, you can use things like real-time data I've got here, which is a call center. In this case, they're recording the calls and the sales that are made, and they've turned that into a points-based system, and they've essentially gamified that call center. So this is providing knowledge, but it's also adding that entertainment value. It's creating something that creates competition and increases productivity. So using data in clever ways can be a great way to innovate, especially if you already have access to that data and it's already the data that you earn. Integration is looking at how we can take systems that exist and bring them together to make them speak to each other, share functions or share data. So the most common use of this is smart homes. So most people will have maybe some form of smart home device, whether it's something just like having a Amazon Echo device that they can speak to get information, or a full smart home setup. Basically, people are integrating so many different things now that it's become a huge part of why people buy into things, because they know it integrates. And this isn't just for physical products. Software and things that you already use can be integrated. So if you're going to buy if you're looking for a new website, for example, but a provider says, well, I'll build a website that will tie in with your CRM and you can integrate all the data, you're more likely to go with that option than you are one that doesn't. So a great way to innovate with a lot less work, because you can actually use something that already exists, partner with that, and bring that into your ecosystem to create a new series of products or to create new innovation. So this is a really cool example. This is a company which I think are just based in America at the moment, but are sort of expanding. And these guys are called Automatic. Now, Automatic literally just sell this small device which plugs into your car and it reads the diagnostics data from your car and puts it into a smartphone app. So they're not actually providing any new data or anything that you don't already have. It's the data that exists in your car. They've just produced a product that reads and can present that data to you. Now, these guys have actually been really clever in the way that they do this, because you can buy the device at a one-off price, but then to have access to the smartphone app that kind of gives you alerts and things when, I know, your tire pressure is low, for example, you have to pay a monthly subscription to that. So these guys are actually making an awful lot of money for essentially presenting you with your own data. So it's a really clever way where they've built an integration and they are charging money purely for the fact that they've created an integration between two things you already own, your phone and your car. So a really clever innovation using integration, and probably quite simple for them to piece together. Now, personalization is one of those innovation things that most people see every day and don't always recognize because we've become so accustomed to it. But if we consider things like Netflix, now most people have a Netflix account or some other streaming service. And pretty much all of them, you'll notice as you are watching TV or films, it will start to customize the suggestions it's given to you based on what you've watched. So this is a basic level of customization, personalization that Netflix has built into their system to make it feel more like it's your platform, it's your account. I mean, everyone is really getting the same package with Netflix. You have the same library of films, you get the same platform in terms of coding, but it now feels like yours because it's been tailored to you. And what people don't realize is actually Netflix tailor to a much more in-depth level. So the cover photos that you see, for example, on films and TV programs, Netflix actually make 2 or 3 different cover artworks for everything that they make, all the programs that they make. And they determine which ones to deliver up to you based on what you watch and kind of which programs you show more interest in. So for example, if you're really into horrors and dark, gritty programming, then what you'll see is the images that are shown will probably change to be a little bit darker and grittier in their use. And you don't really notice this, but actually if you go to someone else's house or as Netflix, sometimes you'll see cover art for a program that you have on yours and they won't match, they'll be completely different. And that's because Netflix has realized that you're attracted to a certain type of imagery and they are, and it's personalized that experience. So it's a really clever thing that Netflix do that most people won't recognize. And the whole purpose of it is to get you to engage, to watch more Netflix, to watch more films, to watch more programs, and provide more value to their platform. So a really powerful but simple type of innovation, just personalizing and tailoring that experience to each user. In terms of communication productivity, you should all be fairly aware of this because we use a tool like this today. So we can actually innovate in the way that we communicate and do our jobs. So the platform we're using today to speak to you is a type of innovation. It's a way of changing how people would typically interact in a workplace. But there's lots of other tools that allow people to do this. So there's things like Slack, which is essentially a chat tool, which is, they sell themselves as trying to replace email. You shouldn't need to use email for anything internal because we have this tool. It's much more quick to send messages. It's efficient. It integrates with the other platforms you've got. So again, they're tying together all these different consumer needs that we discussed earlier and creating what has actually become a standard for a lot of workplaces. Most modern companies, especially companies like tech companies and companies that have offices all over the world, tend to use something like Slack to communicate. So it's become an industry standard already. And the reason it's become an industry standard is because they looked at all those consumer needs and they looked at a way that they could take all of those and use innovation to deliver a platform that address those consumer needs. So something really simple, but again, a huge game changer for many industries. And finally, virtualization. So this is sort of the more fun and entertaining one. Virtualization is essentially digitizing and visualizing data and information. So most people have seen this in forms of virtual reality or augmented reality. And in this scenario, we've got a company called Fundamental VR Surgery. And they've created a system that allows people to practice various operations to understand kind of how they work and to get better at doing them. Now, obviously, by virtualizing this, they're making that process much safer because they don't have to do that practice on real life patients or cadavers. So they're making it a lot safer for everyone involved. But they're also able to capture that data as well, so they can record it, they can play it back, they can introduce new scenarios into the training, all for a much lower cost. And actually, I've seen a lot of people use virtual reality for training, but sending it out to people so they can do it at home. So again, even if people aren't in the same space, they can keep up with the training, they can keep up with that education. So virtualization is a great way to create virtual environments and virtual scenarios to innovate and to deliver some of those consumer needs. And finally, probably something that I would suggest to anybody that's looking at anything digital, developing itself, buying into it, whatever that may be, understand what is already out there. There's been so many times I've spoken to people and they've discussed something and said, I've got this great idea, just to find out that there's 10 tools out there that do the exact same thing. So understanding what's out there can probably save you some time and some effort. But also, if it's something you're looking at developing yourself, it helps you understand competition and what other people are looking at. So there's a few ways that we can actually understand what exists out there in terms of technology already. So one of the first is trend analysis. So Google have a completely free website called Trends, and you can go to it by going to trends.google.com. And this platform allows you to type in any search term, and it will tell you how many people are searching for it, where they're searching for it, so you can understand which countries that technology may be popular in, words that are associated with it, so you can understand people's sentiment. And this is a great starting point if you're looking, especially if you're looking at a new technology that you've not really used before, maybe you're not 100% sure on or don't know everything about it, to just understand what people's feelings are and understand kind of what the trends are following that technology. The next one, which is a little bit more straight to the point and actually gives you a lot of platforms to look at, is Product Hunt. So Product Hunt is a platform where people who are developing new products put them up and give access to those products for other people within the industry or people that are interested in technology to look at, try, give feedback. And it's become so popular, this particular website, that even huge companies like Google are going to these websites to post new products before they become publicly available. So only recently, Google have been working on a project management tool, and they released the first early draft of that on Product Hunt for people to use and try for free. So it's a really good way to actually see what's coming up, what people are working on, big companies and smaller companies. And also it's something that people vote on, so you can see every day that there's a vote on what were the most popular technologies that were released this day that people have posted. And this is actually a great way to identify trends. So a year or so ago, every single top trending thing on Product Hunt was based on the idea of blockchain or cryptocurrency, because it was a big thing. Everyone was talking about it. We was hearing stories about people making millions from, cryptocurrency they forgot they had. So people were just developing lots and lots of platforms based on it. And it was giving people an idea of, this is what people that are buying into technology are looking at right now. So it's a great way to understand trends and to actually find new technologies for yourself. And as an added bonus, with these platforms, they actually tend to offer a lot of free discounts and things. So you can actually buy into products early on, either get a huge discount if you decide to continue to use that product, and some of them actually just offer it for free. So if you're willing to take it on at an early stage, you can actually get some software that could be very expensive for completely free. So worth looking at and looking through to see if you can find anything that maybe suits your needs before you go to the obvious places like Google to try and find platforms. Something that's slightly more product-based or consumer-based is Kickstarter. So probably a lot of people have heard of Kickstarter, but Kickstarter is essentially a crowdfunding platform. So the idea behind Kickstarter is someone will propose a project, propose some platform or products that they're working on, and people can pre-purchase or back that project by putting some money against it. So they will essentially buy the products before it's ready for release. And by everyone buying into that product and saying, yes, I would be interested in buying this when it's ready, people are actually able to then fund those projects. So this is a great way to find very early days projects and new technologies. And in a way, I actually think this is a much more interesting way to gauge trends, because things like Product Hunt and Google Trends are free. You can just type in a search term in Google, it doesn't cost you anything, or you can just click a vote in button on Product Hunt, which is a very easy process to do. To back something on Kickstarter, you have to physically give some of your money to that project to say that you believe in it and you think it's a good idea. So sometimes when we see these products on Kickstarter that have got huge backing and people are putting a lot of money into it, in a way that's almost a much more valuable way of looking at what people are willing to buy into, because you know they're already putting money into that technology. So if you could create something using it or buy into it, you know people are willing to pay for that. So a really useful way to actually scope out trends and find new technologies for yourself. And finally, magazines. So there's lots of tech publications out there, and most of them will talk about new things that are coming up. They'll do reviews. A lot of them are actually now paid platforms, but these three that I've put here, so Wired, Tech Insider, and T3, are still some of the most recognized in the industry, and they constantly talk about new things that are coming out. So it's a great way to understand what's out there and what's going to be out there soon, which you can use to either buy into a product or service, or even just understanding what's coming so you can understand how it may change your own industry, may change your product or service. So for example, almost all of these magazines and other tech publications have been talking about smart glasses recently, because they know that Apple are about to release some smart glasses, and there's lots of other companies that are kind of working on it and will be releasing it fairly shortly. And they've all been talking about how they think that will change how people buy, how people behave. If we don't need to look at our phone as much because the information is popping up in our glasses, then will that change people's purchasing behavior? So understanding that can give you that heads up and give you that early warning to avoid being disrupted, and allow you to be disruptive yourself. So it's always worth checking out and always worth looking into. And also, all of these places are great ways to find early adopters. So if you have a product yourself that you want to try out and you want to see if people will be interested in it, you can send it to Product Hunt, or you can put it on Kickstarter and see what people's interest is. Interesting idea as well is if you use Kickstarter when the product is still in the early ideas, but it's not ready to go. People backing it will actually help you fund that project. So actually it's a great way to get early days funding for a project. And if it's something that's a little bit more developed or it's a little bit larger in scale, you could contact tech publications and they may be willing to write reviews or things about that product. And finally, development. So I'm only going to very quickly go through this because, again, I don't think everybody on here wants to be a developer. But understanding how the development process works can make life a lot easier, especially if it's something that you're looking at implementing into your own business. So maybe you're looking at, either bringing on digital teams, or you're looking at having some digital platforms built for yourself or whatever. Understanding the process that a development will go through and understanding the terminology can really make that process easier. So the standard development process will essentially follow these 5 stages. Everyone might have their own sort of twist on it, but this is the kind of basic layout for any project, anything that is digital anyway. So the first phase in that would be the insight and the stimulus. So this is actually probably one of the most important parts, if not the most important part, and that is getting the information you need at the start to direct that project. So this is where we would bring in things like the 5 E's that we talked about, the consumer needs, the different types of digital innovation, and it's getting all of that insight in one place and sharing it with everyone involved, so that everyone is doing things for the right reasons, and know what problems they're trying to address, what consumer needs they're trying to achieve. And by getting this correct, you will have a much higher success rate, because you're not going to get to the end of a product and realize that you haven't actually delivered anything that adds value to a consumer. Once we have the insight and stimulus, we move to ideation. And this is where we basically try to combine all those things together. So we take the inspiration that we may have seen from other products. We might take some of the types of innovation, and we'll take consumer needs, and we'll kind of combine them to look at what potential products could be made to deliver something of value. And at this point, it's just a case of trying lots of things, lots of ideas. The more the merrier. Everyone tries to think of lots of different ways to address the problems that we're aiming to fix, or the value we're trying to create. Once we have this ideation done, then we're looking at selection. So this is essentially filtering down all of those ideas and sort of tidying them up a little bit, so that we can actually sort of focus in on maybe one or two ideas that we really think hit the mark and have that value to consumers. So one way that we suggest people do this is using a selection matrix. So placing everything that you think has importance to you into a matrix, and then marking each idea against that kind of criteria, so that you're not just going, oh no, that sounds like a cool idea. You're looking at how it can actually address issues, and how it can add the value you need. The next step is to wireframe and prototype. And this is to basically to create a vision of what that product will look like when it's done. So to wireframe out, to understand what will link to what button will link to which page, how the consumer will navigate that product, and then to create something that is a basic prototype to test it and actually see, is this something that people have interest in? So before you go kind of all out and launch something, prototyping it first and putting it somewhere where people can test it and give feedback is a really important thing before launch. Because once we launch something, if it's not right and people don't like it, what we found is it's very, very hard to bring those people back and get them to try it again, even if after you've changed it. So it's really important to do this before we launch anything. The final stage is to test it. So to try and break it basically, and to see what people's feedback is, to see where the pain points are, to see if there's anything that people don't like in the operation. And basically within this process, we have a kind of loop mechanism where at any point, this is not a kind of linear process where you just go from 1 to 5. If, for example, you get to selection and none of the ideas quite hit the mark and don't really seem like they address all the things you want in your criteria, then you can go back to ideation and start again. If you get to wireframe and prototype, and it just doesn't work, you could go to selection and pick another one that you've got there, or you could go all the way back to ideation and start again. So you can at any point either progress to the next level, or you can rework and go back to a previous state. And this is the process that pretty much any developer will work in. And a lot of people work in this for many types of projects, but it's really good to understand this so you can understand where you may be in that process, to understand conversations that are happening. Or if you want to look at, how do we become more digital? How do we develop digital products ourselves? What process should we follow? This is a very basic process that you can put in place, get people to work to, and it gives you a little bit more process to what you're doing, gives you a little bit more structure. And finally, the thing to understand is that a launch for a digital product is never the end point, or shouldn't be the end point. So if you create something that is physical, you give to people. So if you're selling a washing machine, once you've sold that and people have taken it home, that's the end of that development process. You've built the product, a customer's bought it, and that's the end of it. With digital, what people expect is they want more. They want to see progress. So when you, an example you've probably all seen, if you download an app for your phone, you will probably see that there's constant updates happening to that app, and things are constantly changing. And that's what consumers want from a digital product. They want to see constant progress. But also for the people developing them, or for the people that are selling those products, It's a really important thing because it allows you to understand how a consumer is using your products, identify bits that maybe aren't working as well as they should, and correct them. So it's not a case of we create the product, it didn't hit the mark, and that's it, we're done. You know, you can adjust, you can adapt, and you can keep progressing that product to make it better, to make it more valuable, and to bring more people into it. So it's actually one of the beauties of working in a digital landscape. Very few things are ever finite and done. We can keep going back and we can keep changing in most cases. So basically, just to round it all up, a framework for a successful digital project or development, whether you're buying into developing or looking at something for yourself, we basically just need to follow the steps that I've gone through today. So I'll skip past this bit. So firstly, we need to look at the anatomy, understanding how that works. Have we got the correct anatomy of our digital products? Have we got the right storage solution? Is it secure? Is the back end function as it needs to be? Does it look good? Is there a good user experience? We need to look at the product itself. So are we addressing consumer needs, and are we bringing in any automation? Any innovation? If we tie these two things together and we can actually use innovation to tackle consumer needs, then we're creating an attractive product or service. We're creating something that people will see value in and want to pay for. And finally, how do we get people to buy into a product that's digital? It's a little bit difficult if you don't have a shop front. You know, the internet is a big place. So there's lots of platforms that we can use to get that information out there, to get people to sign up, get early adopters. So all of the platforms I discussed, Product Hunt, the magazines, but we can also do things like putting on focus groups, offering beta. So a beta test is offering this platform or products for free or a cheap rate to people on the understanding that it's not done. There'll probably be things you don't like. Can you let us know what those things are? And allow us to fix them. And with that understanding, we'll give it to you for cheaper or for free. So most companies will do that. And it's a great way to get that early adoption. And finally, understanding a structure and a process of how you can take that information and actually deliver a product. So take all of that knowledge that can be quite messy and sort of give it some barriers so that you have an easy to follow process that everyone can stick to, and actually get a deliverable at the end of it, and something that you can sell, make money from, or roll out to make your company more digital. So that's our basic sort of rundown of digital technology, how to understand it, how to build it, how to embrace it. But what we've delivered is quite a top level approach. It's quite basic, and I'm sure there's probably a lot of bits that we haven't covered. This is where the Grow My SME support can actually really help and tailor that. So I'm going to pass back to Wayne. I was going to talk about some more personalised, tailored support for you and your business.
Jamie, thanks very much. I hope you all found that quite interesting. Again, as Jamie says, it's kind of like a top level process, really, where we're sort of talking about digital as a wider subject. The one thing to take away really is that when we talk about digital, it's definitely vitally important for businesses. Okay, if you imagine what you're doing in your everyday life, and the way that you shop, the way that you interact, the way that you look after your health, the way that you look at the sports, everything you do, literally everything probably goes through your device in some way or other. And it's no different for businesses, because the businesses ultimately connect to consumers, and they're using these devices. So you need to be adapting. But the other thing to bear in mind is that when we say digital, it's not just the sake of making digital products for the sake of making digital products. It has to be meaningful, and it has to offer something to the user. And that 5-step process that Jamie was talking about, where he was talking about the developers going through the 5-step process, now would be a good time to start looking at that process just yourself within your own organization, to try and identify the barriers that you might be facing. COVID-19's really pushed things forward and propelled things forward in a way that businesses all over the world have been heavily disrupted and have had to adapt. You know, they haven't been able to trade in the usual way that they would do so, because this thing has come along and it's stopped it. And for the most part, most of these businesses, large or small, have really struggled to navigate because they've not had the agility to pivot their business model and change the way that they're doing things in such a way that digital really allows them to do. Again, just like we're doing this now, we're having this call, you're trying to get insight from somebody to help your business, and we're using a digital platform to try and do that. This is a really basic example, but you know, this is happening literally every single day. So maybe this is something you could be looking at within your own business now, and thinking about, okay, what are our pain points? If you're a physical location and you can't get customers in the door because of lockdown, okay, how do you address that? You know, how do you add value to what you're doing? Maybe people are stopping to buy your stuff because they feel like they're battening down the hatches or whatever. How can you offer a wider value? And when I say value, it's not always about money or making more money. It might be you're adding value through the collection of data. It might be the added value that it might be brand value. It might be insight that you're providing. How do you personalize the offer that you've got to your customer so that they feel like they want to stick with you? You know, these are all things to be looking at, and the ideas that can spin off that are endless. And then off the back of that, the products and the digital services that are available, either off the shelf or custom built, or one that we didn't touch upon today is things like partnerships. Could you partner with another business that offers a service or a product or a digital offer that could integrate with your offer to add value to the customer and also add revenue streams? How can you open up new revenue streams using these infrastructures? There's so much stuff out there. And today we're just talking about a very top level overview of it, but you can find out more and you can get more tailored support, and that's what this is all about. So just to roll on to the supports that are available. So the next ICT for Growth webinars, so a bit like what we've done today. Let's see if I can skip through this. What we got coming up. So develop and grow your business by combining cloud and agile methodologies. That's on the 25th of Jan. 1st of Feb, how to handle multiple invites on a webcam call. This is probably something that we've all been suffering with, so definitely worth tuning into that. 8th of Feb, harnessing AI, artificial intelligence, for competitive advantage. This could be really interesting. Jamie touched a little bit about AI today. This is really advancing in the way that we're doing things, again, in our everyday lives. And it's something you could be integrating into your business. And it always sounds quite high end and something that's out there. And if you're a very small business, it probably sounds out of reach, but it's actually not. This stuff is really accessible. And if you understand it, you can embrace it and adapt it. So that's 3 of the next ones coming up, but there's absolutely loads of them. So you can go to the Grow My SME website and click on events, and you can see all of the events that are on there, and they cover just about everything you can imagine. So definitely worth tuning into that. But the bit that I really wanted to talk about was the Digital Catalyst Specialist support. So this is really a tailored one-to-one service that is being, as part of the Grow My SME program, that's been put in place to offer direct support to businesses in the Humber region on a very tailored one-to-one level. So today, these webinars are kind of talking about a top-level overview, trying to apply to everyone, but these one-to-one, face-to-face things are actually in place to work with you directly to help you embrace digital technology, help you identify barriers, help you overcome problems, help you identify opportunities and gaps and new ways to grow, and how digital can help you do that. So as a general overview of how it works, so you'll have an expert like Ideation Group, and there's lots of other consultants from all different backgrounds. They'll come in and work with your business. Stage 1 is to essentially do a review of where you're at now digitally. So are you currently adopting digital technology? How much is it? Is it part of a strategy within the business? Are you a bit ad hoc and maybe you just use it as and when you need to? That's what we need to understand. Where are you at now, and what are you doing? And then using the results of that that review, and based on the conversations as well that we have with you, you know, it's quite an in-depth conversation to understand your business and what you're about and what your vision is, etc. We use that to try and inform then a one-to-one workshop type environment where we come and work with you directly and try and identify solutions to what we found, you know, and that, again, it might be solutions to problems that you're having, or to streamline the business, or to save money, or whatever it might be, or it might be to develop new products, or open up to new markets, or increase revenue, or, you know, hire new people, or whatever that might be. So you can cover just about everything. Every business is different. Everyone's got their own thing, and that's why the one-to-one thing works really well. And then at the end of it, essentially you get a roadmap. I'll just click through to this next bit, just explains a bit easier. It gives you a roadmap, an action plan that says, what have we identified? What could you be doing? And then not only that, how could you do it? So brokerage. So that's kind of linking you to maybe a technology provider in the area that could help build something, if that's what we've identified. It might be linking you to finance options and grants and funding. It could be linking you to further training or further added value from education, you know, maybe online or another course or something like that. As I say, everything's different, but the idea is to gauge where you're at now and then work with you directly to build upon that and find new opportunities, and then off the back of that give you a roadmap to then actually action it. And you know, what is it all about? Well, it's trying to help you grow the business. So as I say, it's unlocking opportunities, it's addressing pain points. I'm just skipping through this quite quickly because you know, you probably don't need to read it verbatim. But, you know, ultimately it's identifying where technology can play a role in your business. Some examples here, they're far from exhaustive as it says, but it might be around digital marketing and social media support. It could be moving stuff to the cloud and off physical cumbersome servers. It could be looking at applications to increase productivity or streamline e-commerce, maybe selling online. Cybersecurity, this is a big one. We're very much in a digital age, and the crime that's coming around is very much digital crime and cyber crime, and you really need to be on your game for this because they're getting smarter and smarter, and you need to make sure that you're protected. It might be a cumbersome things like, you know, administrative type things like accounting, and how you can streamline that, and how you can integrate that importantly as well into all of your other systems. You know, you might be in a business where you're doing multiple tasks and spending most of your day doing multiple tasks in different ways when all that could be done through one automated process. And that's maybe something to be looking at to save time and save costs. It's impartial advice. It's completely one-to-one, and it's not, you know, we're essentially trying to find solutions to help the business completely impartially with no impacts, you know, from our side, you know. But it might be, as I say, developing new products, new offers, winning more work, attracting more staff, keeping you safe, you know, the list goes on. So it's completely tailored support. And I'll just sort of skip through these long bits, but ultimately, you know, I mean, I can go around this forever, but ultimately what we're trying to do, we're helping you to try and sustain your business right now, so survive, but also to grow the business, you know, so to develop more profits, to have a future, to be able to expand, to hire more people. You know, the list goes on. But fundamentally, the point of today is to say that digital technology is not some far out thing. You know, it's part of our everyday lives. It's right there, and it could be something as simple and small that you adopt to change the way the business, or it could be something quite grand that really reforms the way that your business works. But what I can tell you is, if you're not embracing digital technology, you are in real danger, because you're going to need to do that. And if you're not, then there's a good chance that your business isn't going to be around for much longer. You really need to be embracing this stuff, even on the most basic level, because that is just the way of the world. And this program, the Digital Catalyst program, is in place to help you do that. So if you're interested in taking part in that, signing up to your business, it's free of charge. If you're an SME, you probably qualify. And if you're based in the Humber, and that's across the 4 areas of the Humber, so that's Hull, East Riding, North Links, I forget what the other one, North Links, North East Links, I think. Those 4 areas, if you're around the Humber region, you probably qualify. Anyway, here's some details on the screen. So you can go to the Grow My SME website, growmysme.co.uk/ICT/Digital Catalyst. Or if you Google Digital Catalyst Humber, you'll find it. There's a telephone number there to ring. Or there's an email address that you can email, digitalcatalyst@winningmood.com. Winning Moods are the company that they're a business support company, and they're the ones that are managing this whole Digital Catalyst program, which is why you can see their name there. But essentially, if you apply, you register your interest, then someone will come back to you, they'll talk to you, they'll sign you up, and then assign you a consultant. Could be Idenic, could be any of the other consultants that are on the course. And then we'll come and work with you and try and help you grow your business. But you've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. It's free of charge, it's funded. It's around about 12 hours of support, give or take. And, you know, you might just find just having that external point of view come in and have a look at your business and kind of give you a different point of view and tell you what's out there and help you grow it. probably means quite a lot right now. Also, the other thing to bear in mind is obviously we're in a state of lockdown, and you know, usually we would do this stuff face to face in your premises or in another room, but we can do all of this online. So if we need to run the workshops online and stuff, that's fine. Again, that's kind of the point really with the digital technology. So I hope this has been helpful. Anyway, that's all the information. I'll leave those details on the screen there. And if it is something that you want to, if you want to take part in, then I would invite you to have a look and see if see how we can help you. But yeah, if you want any further advice, just dial in. Any questions? If anyone's got any questions, now's the time to jump in. We're happy to hang around for a few more minutes. We're finished slightly early, so if you've got anything or any comments, we can certainly address those for you. There's usually a poll on here, but I can't see it. I don't know if, Jamie, if you've got that. Can you see that?
Yeah, I've just launched the poll for everyone.
All right, great. I can't see it for some reason. Thank you. Yeah, if you are still on the call, if you wouldn't mind just answering the quick questions in the poll, that would be really helpful. It really is just to help us guide these webinars and to help understand what's helpful, what's giving you insight, if the information you're receiving is worth it, or if we need to pivot it and go in a different direction, etc., etc. So that feedback is always helpful. But if you haven't got any questions, then I hope you've enjoyed today. Thanks very much, Jamie, for taking us through it. Have a look at the Digital Catalyst program. If you want to be part of that, feel free to jump on it. And we'll see you for the next webinar. Thanks very much.
Thanks.